Hi, this is Alexcursus. Sometimes I grab multiple Gampla and talk some meta topics. This time I want to do a kind of response to a comment that probably all mobiles like me would have triggered for more dramatic wording. As part of the community, as we have newer fans coming in and grabbing older models, which I do advocate doing. Sure, they are harder to build because of the older technologies, but also they would but the techniques to build them are also much better developed. The system, the methods to build them have been distilled over the decades. So whatever you can find today would be very well figured and thought out method of building the older models. But at the same time, the newer models does have much better part and color separation, and you do get a lot better results by just building them with a bit of color correction stickers. However, it really triggered me to hear people saying, oh, the master grade feels like a enlarged like 1 to 100 version of HG, which I'm like, my sweet summer child, have you built a 1 to 100 HG? Now, before I go further, I am taking the extreme here. The rising Gundam here is one of the 90s 1 to 100 HG, not the ones from 2000s like the Double O or the 2010s like the Armblood Orphan ones. So this is almost the worst case scenario. There are even worse cases, but I think those are really extreme that I would not advise you to go get those and build those unless you really want to challenge yourself. But within reason, I think the GHG or the W Wing Gundams or the X Gundams, they like if Bandai do reprints of them, I do think they are good for what they are, basically. Especially when you want a larger piece that you can just sort of experiment onto. Like, because they were released back in the day and Bandai didn't really take a steep price hike, they remain relatively cheap. For example, Rising Gundam here is only slightly more expensive than Gunvolver here. If I have the Lenza here, it would be the same price. So for just a little bit more, you get a much bigger Gunpla. Of course, Rising Gundam isn't the biggest among the lines I mentioned, but you get the idea. Gunvolver isn't the biggest either. Now that I talk about what I am going to talk about, let's take a closer look at what I mean by My Sweet Summer Child. So the chests in the Rising Gundam video I have mentioned, they are cast in separate colors. If you want to paint it, you have to separate them yourself again, and there is a risk of breaking, but that's not the purpose of this video. This video is talking about something more grave, like harder things to do. For example, the elbow joint. It is 100% polycap. Unlike the HGUC here, which does have a co-district type, have a different system, but yeah, it's basically plastic with a covering a polycap ring inside. Rising Gundam or polycap. We talk about the gap, but the gap is not the worst thing about Rising Gundam's foot. What's really bad is the gate, like the injection point, is in the sunken part of the ankle armor. So after you cut it off the sprue, you have to find yourself a very thin strip of sandpaper or foam to clean it off. If you try to clean this up with your god hand, it would be a gone hand. And that's not the only large nub. You can see the foot here. It is this big size. And this is for most of the kits. It's all relatively large injection points that would surely do a number to your god hand if you are not careful. I actually break out my sandpaper stick pack to get them cleaned up relatively okay. I am very much going ham at covering up the injection ports with a liner, and even that is just fraction of the size of what you have on the Rising Gundam. This is HGUC. This is in no way new, but it is 5 to a decade newer, give or take, to this. So yeah, you can probably still use god hand on your old HGUC, but on a 1 to 100, it will be a gone hand. But of course, being larger means it's much easier to sand it, and even if you make mistakes, they would be a lot less apparent as compared to 1 to 144, where if I sand these faults or these injection gates and I didn't do a good job at covering them up, I really have to paint in order for them to go away. In addition, even though it is older, the larger size do allow for more color separation. Code district type here barely got a chest, like a hatch for the cockpit, and a bit of color separation. Well, really same for Rising Gundam for the skirts, but the chest got a lot more color. Same goes for the head. Both weapons are in one color as well, but Rising Gundam definitely have a much more old school style of sculpt. It is still more clean. Although Winter District type is kinda different as having a substantially better sculpt weapon compared to many of peers, but still. Also being black really helps. But yeah, newer model have better, finer sculpt. The old but larger one definitely have more room for you to work with. While we are here, you can also see how, despite both of them are sandwich part separation for the forearm, they are still much better realized or engineered on the 1 to 100. Like, even though it is larger, you can find less fault on it. That's just the perks of a larger model. Same thing for the leg. You just got more room to work with, but again, HGUC did an admirable job of keeping the essentials pretty much, and just clever part separation to bring out the details. So yeah, you can say for older 1 to 100 HG that they are larger, but when you compare to the new HGs like Volva here, Gun Volva have color separation for the top camera, for the eyes, and there are details in the transceiver inside a translucent piece that I painted in metallic. While for Rising Gundam here, it does get color separation for the mouthpiece and the eyes, but I have to paint the top camera. And the grills, I have to paint them on the Gun Volva. You can even have white sandwich in between the helmet and the face mask, or different sides of the helmet. So color separation wise, modern HG is much better than what we used to have. The just basically Bandai separates the IMO pieces into different runners so that you can paint them or put stickers in before you assemble it. The legs, once again, clever part separation means that you don't even have to color correct the black parts of the kit of Gunvover. Thruster, Rising does have the Moe thruster, but Gunvover ones isn't too bad either. Niyama, Gunvover just have a single piece instead of this mess. And the foot, again, single piece, none of the mess like Rising here. Side by side of the lower legs, Rising here, quite a bit of sculpt, but Volvo isn't doing too bad either. And you can see no ugly sandwich gap on the knee and the shin, because Volvo have really 3D polygonal armor separation. Only for the joint on the side, that's really only kind of messy on the side on my part. But you know, if I take a bit more time, it could be cleaner. Even so, it is much smaller compared to the knobs you have on the Rising Gundam. How this injection port is basically a third of the width of the foot, while on Gunvover it's just a tiny blob that is probably not noticeable until I, put a dot of liner there, because I rather them looking dirty than looking bright. So, comparing to the HGUC, similar size, although I would say it's much less pronounced compared to HGUC because it is on the side and off to nowhere. Even these ones on the side here, you really wouldn't notice them. Whereas the old HGUC, even this knob is pretty clean, you can still see it on the camera. And I haven't even talked about the shield. Like, Gunvover get 3 colors in 3 layers, while Rising Gundam only really getting 2, and 2 for the Cold District type as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you're spoiled by the new HG releases. Things wasn't as sunshiny and rainbowy back then. I am very glad that I don't really need much tool to build a nice looking or like nicer looking model than I need back then. And I have to say, after building this kit, I think I will slow down my video. Like I will take longer to make videos, basically. It used to be G-frame. It would be easy for me to knock out 2 videos a week. The only bottleneck is my ability of writing down a script that's not really popular. So I dropped that part. And then I start doing HGs with the older HGUC series, which is fine. But I always feel like I could make them look, better if I got a bit more time. So as this guy, I made it before I have all these Alexcursus going off to the side and analyzing the molds type of video, and it looks rough compared to the Rising Gundam, despite how old the Rising Gundam is. Because I'm pushing myself to do 2 videos per week, I also have less time to think about these kind of meta or comparison videos. That is really what I try to do on the channel. Just that I feel like we need to establish the individual kits before we can really do comparisons. So So I spend lots of time making individual kids videos and leave no time for the comparisons. I would be continue doing that, but I think I will spend more time. Basically, you might still see 2 videos going up per week, but it would likely be just one from here on. And occasional, there will be a second one, like the comparison videos or meta videos, etc. Thanks for watching. See you next time.